Hello, it's Nicola Morgan here, and today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm answering questions from a school on my novel Fleshmarket, which was published in 2003, so well over 20 years ago, and is still in print, which is a really unusual thing, and I'm absolutely delighted about that. And the reason that it's still in print is really down to schools like this one, which I will name in a minute, who read it and enjoy it and study it, usually in S2. And for those of you not lucky enough to live in Scotland and be familiar with the Scottish school system, S2 is year 8 in other parts of the UK. And recently I was contacted by Miss Handsome and her English class from Balfron High School, which is not far from Stirling in the west of Scotland. And Miss Hanson told me that the students of S2 were reading and enjoying Fleshmarket. I always love to hear how much they're enjoying it. I think the main reason you enjoy it so much is possibly because it's very gory, quite shocking in parts, certainly gory and certainly exciting. And I'm delighted that you enjoy it. Anyway, Miss Handsome said that you were studying it and that you might have some questions for me, and I'm always delighted to answer questions. Now, Miss Handsome also, when she sent me the questions, she sent me some of your creative writing pieces based on Fleshmarket or inspired by themes of Fleshmarket. And honestly, they're wonderful, they're fantastic. You might think, oh, well, Nicola's going to say that because she's a nice person and she's not going to say something negative. But honestly, these were remarkable pieces of writing, very moving, very, very skillful, very cleverly written. And honestly, any adults who are listening to this and who are worried that perhaps those headlines about screen time and social media and phones destroying the ability of young people to read and to write and to be creative. Not true. These students have proved that the creative writing skills are well up there and well worth reading and listening to. So thank you very much for those and well done to all of you. Now I'm going to get quickly on to the questions because we don't want this video to be too long. All of the questions, apart from one, were easy-ish for me to answer because they're questions that I'm fairly familiar with. One of the questions is one that I haven't had before, but it's a really interesting one. I won't be able to answer it in full because there's a lot I would like to say about it. So I'm going to answer it very briefly when I get to it, but I will write something for you to give a bit more detail about what I think of that question and the answer to it, I hope. So Ella G asked, how do you make your characters feel human when writing? I think that there's a bit of magic that happens when a writer, and I don't mean just professional writers, you as well, when you write, when you try to get inside the head of a character, you're doing something quite magical, which only humans can do. Humans understand other humans. Now, obviously, I haven't experienced all of the things that my characters were going through, particularly because my characters are 200 years ago and everything was very different. So what I had to do was to try hard, to work hard, to take my time. I don't think you can get into your characters and make them feel human very quickly, very instantly. It's like polishing something. It starts off messy and it gets clearer and cleaner and better. So you have to make the effort, the mental effort, the human brain effort of working out what they really might have been feeling and thinking based on the fact that they're not exactly like me. I am one person and I'm writing about other characters who are quite different from me and in very different situations. So we have to use human empathy and we have to really, really work on that to get it to be as as accurate and as real as we can make it. But I also think we have to know some things when we try to make our characters feel human. And what I mean by that is quite well illustrated by what happened to me when I was writing Fleshmarket. I wrote the first draft fairly quickly, fairly easily, and sent it to my editor. And she said, "No, you're going to have to do a lot more on this. You're going to have to do a lot more research." And what I discovered during the process of that is that in order to make a character feel real, you, the writer, have to know many, many things, facts about that character. Now, okay, you're making those facts up, but you also have to know facts about what their actual life would have been like at the time or in the situation or in the place that you're writing about. And in Fleshmarket, that meant that if I'm describing Essie, for example, running along the streets of Edinburgh in the night in January, I had to know that a girl in her situation at that time probably wouldn't have had shoes. So she's running barefoot. And that immediately gives me a little bit more ability to get inside what it might be feeling like for her doing that. If I'm thinking about a character drinking or eating something, I needed to know what kind of furniture they'd be sitting at, what the chair would be like, what the the vessel, the container would be that they were drinking from or eating from. And as soon as you get to know those details, which in the case of history requires research, then you can start really to imagine yourself in those characters. So it takes time, it takes effort, it takes some skill, but anyone can learn those skills. You practice them like any skills, but it also takes some knowledge, some discovering some things. So there was a lot of research that went on for that. Katie asked, do you prefer fiction or non-fiction? I don't know whether you mean writing fiction or non-fiction or reading it, so I'll answer both. I find that writing non-fiction is much, much easier than writing fiction. And therefore, you might think, well, I'm going to prefer it because we tend to like things that are easy. And to an extent, that's true. So in some ways, I prefer writing non-fiction because it's easier for me. But on the other hand, things that are difficult, when you get them right, when you finish them, they feel more satisfying. So in a way, I also could say I prefer writing fiction. I have more fun, or more, no, not fun. I have more pleasure when I'm writing non-fiction because it's easy, but I get a different sort of pleasure and more fulfillment and more satisfaction, more pride when I have written fiction, or when it's working, when it feels really good. Then it feels even better than writing non-fiction. In terms of reading it, I think I prefer reading fiction. I like reading them both, but you do them for different purposes, really. I usually read non-fiction to learn stuff. It's pleasurable as well, or it should be, but I do it for a purpose, to learn stuff, whereas I read fiction to have a pleasurable experience of diving into the story and disconnecting from whatever is going on in my life. Not that horrible things are going on in my life, but just to disconnect and to escape and to relax and to broaden my mind and feed my mind. So I think I do prefer reading and writing fiction over non-fiction. How long did it take me to write Fleshmarket? There's three questions here from Claudia and Ellen. How long did it take me to write Fleshmarket? Was it ever difficult to keep going with this or any other novel? What's your biggest struggle when writing? It probably took me about 9 months. It's a long time ago, so I can't remember exactly, but typically a novel takes me about 9 months. But in that 9 months, I'm also doing lots of other things as well. I'll be doing other types of work, shorter things. I might be doing talks, and there's preparation for that as well. So I don't just sit down on a Monday and write all day and write till the end of Friday. I'm doing lots of other things as well. And you might be interested to know that at the same time as writing Fleshmarket, I was also writing some Thomas the Tank Engine books. I know, quite hard to get your head around that. The other next bit of the question was it ever difficult to keep going with this or any other novel? I do find it difficult to keep going very often. Sometimes I don't finish. Sometimes it's not working and I have to leave it. But usually, fortunately, that doesn't happen. It didn't happen with Fleshmarket, but I always do find that the middle of a novel is difficult. I think that's quite common for writers, as far as I talk to a lot of them, and it seems to be a common theme. I find the beginning very easy. Love the beginning, setting everything up. The end, I by the time I get there, it's usually relatively easy. I don't know what the end is going to be at the beginning, which is why the middle is difficult, because I've set everything up in the beginning. It's all very exciting, easy, chuck stuff in, throw some ideas, lots of inspiration goes in there. But then once I get towards the middle, I realize that all these things that I threw in at the beginning, I'm going to need to tie them up. And it's the end has got to work, and it's got to work at the right time. And we can't go too slowly, and we can't go too fast. And you've got to make sure that threads or things that you put in at the beginning are tied up at the end. You can't put stuff in and not sort it out by the end, or just sort of forget that it was there. Sometimes I do that, and then I have to take those bits out and leave them out because I realize that they weren't going to work. And by the way, I'm not a very good planner, which is why that process that I've just described is what happens for me, because I can't plan a novel to the end. I can plan nonfiction, but I don't seem to be able to plan a novel right from the beginning to the end. I plan a little bit ahead, and then sometimes I have to keep going back and changing stuff because an idea that I had at the beginning turns out not to work. And then the final bit of that question from Claudia and Ellen was, what is your biggest struggle when writing? And I think that's it really, it's the plot. I love writing the characters. I love choosing the words and polishing them and changing them, constantly changing the words to make the tiny, tiny differences in how they sound. But the actual plot, how do we get from the beginning to the end? How do the various characters have a decent, I don't know if you know the phrase, a story arc? All of that is the hardest for me. It's the plot. It's working out what happens and in what order. Ella C asks, did you help design the cover yourself? No, I didn't. I never do. I don't have those skills. And publishers realize that authors usually don't have the skills of cover design. So what almost always happens is they either do it in the publishing company or they commission an outside artist to do it. Then they will usually send it to the author to say whether they like it. Anytime I have said that I don't like something about the cover, as long as I am able to explain why, I can't just say, "Ooh, don't like it." I have to explain why, and if it's a good reason why I don't like the cover, they will make the changes. This one, Fleshmarket, I don't remember that there were any changes that I asked for in the cover. Having said that, I don't love it. I never have. I never did love it. I think I don't know. I think it's an unusual cover, and that's a good thing. But and it is atmospheric, but for me, it doesn't quite do enough. Also, I don't really like the color orange, but that's a very bad reason for not liking the cover. If I had suggested that as a reason, that would not have been accepted as a relevant reason for not liking the cover. But no, I didn't help design the cover at all. Then Michael, Jensen, Alec, and Miller all asked, are Robbie and Essie inspired by real people like Dr. Knox and Burke and Hare? No, they're not. I would say that any main characters in any of my novels have not been inspired by real people. However, they will almost always have little elements that I have seen in real people. And I don't I don't kind of deliberately do that. It's just that if you start to imagine a character from the start, and with a complete blank canvas, and it could be anybody, you would probably think of some characteristics of some people that you knew or had read about in the news or something. But no, Robbie and Essie are not inspired by real people. I wanted to make them exactly as I needed them to be in the story. However, I would say that Essie has elements of me in her. Um, she is perhaps the child that I wish I'd been brave enough to be. She's like me in the sense that I am also quite stroppy and feisty and prickly. I'm not a calm, relaxed, gentle person in my head. When I say I'm not gentle, I don't mean I'm cruel and nasty, but I mean I'm not a soft and calm and peaceful character. So in that sense, I'm like Essie. I'm a bit my mind is a bit wild, and I use the word spiky. I don't know if you can picture what I mean by that when it's describing a person, but I have those elements of Essie in me. But Essie is much braver than me, so perhaps she's me how I wish I had been as a child, braver and more outgoing, more fearless. And then, who is your favourite character in Fleshmarket? Asked Ella and Marley. Essie is my favourite character. I just think she's, in a way, I like the fact that she's not the main character. And I have sometimes thought of writing a sequel to Fleshmarket where Essie is the main character. Um, but she is my favourite character. She's many people's favourite character. I know that. People have told me that. I just love her sparkiness and her fieriness and her bravery. She doesn't care what people think. She does what she knows is right. She will do the right thing, or what she thinks is the right thing, regardless of what anybody thinks. And I think that's a really good characteristic. Um, then Betsy asked, do you have a favourite part that you like to read out? Yes, I do. I like to, well, I don't do it often, but my favourite part to read out is the first chapter. The reason I don't do it often, and probably won't do it again, is that the two times that I have done it in public at an event, somebody has fainted. In both cases, it was an adult. I don't think I've ever made a young person faint, thank goodness. But although I have to admit that when somebody faints because of what you've written, it is, if you're a writer, it is quite empowering when somebody does that, because you think, oh, that my words my words have that power then. But it isn't something I would like to happen very often. I don't want anyone to hurt themselves. Though you've read it all, but those people who might be listening to this who haven't read it, I won't explain why chapter 1 is likely to make people faint. I think if you read it yourself, you probably won't faint. And I think this is one of the interesting things about reading things yourself rather than watching a film, for example, or even hearing it as an audio. Because when you're reading it yourself, you, the reader, you have control over what you will read. If you are uncomfortable, or you can see that something a bit scary or unpleasant or worrying, or something you don't like is coming, you have the power to stop. Whereas if something is in a film or on the screen, once you've seen it, you've seen it. And you don't have control over that, because you usually don't have enough warning to turn it off. So that is my favourite part to read out, but I don't think I will do it again. So then Cameron and Sarah Louise asked, how did you complete some of the historical research, and do you enjoy historical fiction more than contemporary? Doing the historical research was relatively easy, because at the time I lived in Edinburgh. I lived in Edinburgh for around 28 years. I left about 10 years ago. So I was able to wander around the streets. I was able to go to the People's Story Museum. The Mary King's Close wasn't open at that time. It's a fantastic place to go now, but the preparation for that was happening. And I could go to the Surgeons Museum, which is an amazing place to go. and has various artifacts from Burke and Hare and Dr. Knox as well. So that was relatively easy. Do I enjoy historical fiction more than contemporary? I think I do, actually. Again, I don't know whether you mean writing it or reading it, but I think I enjoy both writing and reading historical fiction more than other genres. I like reading it because it can take you away completely out of the things that we have to worry about now and into another world. And similarly, that's why I like writing historical fiction, because I can tell stories that are dark and gruesome and grim, which are the sort of stories I like to tell. But because they're in the past, and because I care about you, the young readers, I can do these gruesome, dark stories without feeling that they are hurting you or that they're going to be too upsetting or distressing, because they don't really bear relation to your lives very much at the moment. And well, if I tell people that the first chapter is about somebody having an operation without anaesthetic, that is something that you don't have to worry about happening to you. So I felt the freedom to write that story. And then that brings us to the last question, which I said that I would answer briefly, but would write something about later. It's a question I've not been asked before, but it's a question that really means a lot to me. And it's Abby's question, and it's not to do with Fleshmarket, it's to do with any writing. So the question is, what are your thoughts about using AI in writing? And there's so much to say about AI, and I am not going to be one of those people who says either it's absolutely fantastic and wonderful, or it's awful and you mustn't have anything to do with it. I think obviously it's a remarkable set of tools, a whole lot of very, very different things you can do with it. It is not yet nearly as powerful as it one day will be. But as we're starting to use it, we do need to be very, very careful about what we're using it for, and and how we understand it. So there are many aspects of it, but I just want to, in this answer, tackle one aspect. It is the point about creativity, and remembering that A stands for artificial, and that the I of intelligence is a lie, because it isn't intelligence. Humans have intelligence. When I write something, when you write something, it is, and it must be, from my brain and my heart. It's me to you. I'm the writer, you're the reader. I would no more want it to be an artificially written book than I would want an artificial reader. If you are the human reading my work, I need to be the human writing my work. Writing and art and music, but I'm talking about writing. Writing is personal, it's communication, and it's emotional. And artificial intelligence doesn't have emotion, and it doesn't have personality. It also doesn't have thoughts and ideas and originality. It is, AI is, and this is its value, it is a collection of everybody else's thoughts and words, but not mediated by heart and mind. So you might use some tools. You might, as you're practicing, as you're learning, you might use AI for some ideas, but then you've got to scrap those AI ideas and bring your own ideas to bear. You can get AI to show you how to do something, but you have to do it yourself. This is human communication. It's human power. It's human minds. It's human hearts. It's human words. So keep AI out of creative writing, because it's not creative. so much more I could say on that, and so much more I will. But thank you, meanwhile, so much for your questions, and to your teachers for choosing to use Fleshmarket, and to all the other schools in Scotland who have done the same thing. Well done to all of you for the amazing pieces of writing and also the posters that I've seen as well. And I hope you enjoy reading the rest of Fleshmarket, and I hope you enjoy all of the rest of your reading and writing lives. Thank you.